Hello, and welcome to Aesop Grimm's Chronicles, where the emphasis is on immersion and storytelling. While some games contain mature themes or language, you can expect clean commentary from me as a narrator. Additionally, I will provide a content summary in the intro video for each chronicled series, so no one is blindsided or surprised. Let's play a story. Welcome everybody, Aesop Grimm here, and this is the intro video for a brand new chronicle on this channel. As you can see, we will be playing Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. This game is in early access, a little bit unusual for me, and as such it doesn't have an official ESRB rating right now, so I have a workaround. We're going to go to the Steam library page where I will read you the About This Game section. Then I will read a section that they called Mature Content Description. And then I will go online and read the ESRB rating summary for their previous game, Mount & Blade Warband, which should give us a kind of a snapshot of what the developer's done in the past. So without further ado, let's get going. Well, after that, I will move into stuff about our character and about what this game looks like to me and stuff like that. Okay, about this game. The horns sound, the ravens gather. An empire is torn by civil war. Beyond its borders, new kingdoms rise. Gird on your sword, don your armor, summon your followers, and ride forth to win glory on the battlefields of Calradia. Establish your hegemony and create a new world out of the ashes of the old. Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord is the eagerly awaited sequel to the acclaimed medieval combat simulator and role-playing game Mount & Blade Warband. Now, it's actually a prequel, and they tell you that right here. Set 200 years before, it expands both the detailed fighting system and the world of Calradia. Bombard mountain fastnesses with siege engines, establish secret criminal empires in the back alleys of cities, or charge into the thick of chaotic battles in your quest for power. And I'll start playing some trailers for you so that you can see what this game looks like. The mature content description on Steam reads like this. This game is set in a fictional medieval world where the player assumes the role of an adventurer. The player engages in fights and battles and may kill or dispatch enemies and possibly horses using swords, axes, bows, and other melee and ranged weapons. The game shows blood effects and ragdoll integrated death animations. Player can purchase wine and ale and consume these in taverns. Game text includes moderate crude language, and it gives some examples, and I'll just let you know that moderate crude language is an accurate description. Okay, moving over to the ESRB rating for the previous title, Warband. It is rated T for teen, alcohol reference, blood, mild language, mild suggestive themes, and violence. Rating summary. This is an action role-playing game in which players assume the role of an adventurer in a fictional medieval world. Players can freely visit towns, interact with characters, complete quests, and pursue various career paths in the open world environment. The game depicts on-foot and on-horseback combat. Players use swords, axes, hammers, maces, and crossbows to attack enemies. Battles can be frenetic at times with intense audio fidelity, loud and constant battle cries, sword slashing, flesh impact sounds. Some scenes involve more protracted melee style, i.e. close quarter combat battles against multiple enemies. Small spurts of blood are briefly visible during these battles, and faint bloodstains sometimes develop on characters' clothing and or their skin. Character dialogue covers a wide range of topics and can include references to suggestive behavior, and they give some references here. I will just tell you that it is absolutely suggestive behavior. It's not anything super over the top necessarily. It just very much fits that description. You have adult things, adult relationships, stuff of that nature being mentioned here in the dialogue as examples. Stand by, let me get the next trailer go. Well, hold on. Range topics include suggestive behavior. The game contains several references to alcohol and also has some minor expletives that can be heard in the dialogue. So not just read, but heard. And I would also say that that's an accurate description as far as minor expletives given the examples that they're showing me here. Now remember, that is for Mount and Blade Warband. But what I can tell you is that the first part of that, where it's talking about the violence, that parallels perfectly with Bannerlord. That's a pretty accurate description for Bannerlord as well, I think, when it comes to the violence. Probably more blood because it's a higher fidelity game. And then on top of that, I have a mod that's going to add to that a little bit. It's nothing super over the top. It looks realistic to me, but the blood textures will be on the ground for longer and stuff like that. So that's pretty accurate. So if it's accurate in that area, I think it's probably safe to assume that it's accurate in the other, but I cannot attest to that. I've either not noticed it myself or I'm too early in the game, which is very, very possible to have seen any of that stuff. So, take that with a grain of salt, but there you go. And I think that does it. That's a good overview when it comes to the content briefing as far as whether you want to continue watching this series or allow this to play in your house or not. Okay, so now moving on, this game seems like a rags to riches story. You start out as a single player on a horse with the clothing on your back, and it's not very good, and some basic weapons, and those are not very good either. And from there, you move on to become the leader of a warband, basically, and you go out and you can either become a bandit. I think you can be a bandit, or you can go and hunt bandits like a bounty hunter. The game actually refers to them as looters. And you have bandit camps and you have looters. The looters come from the bandit camps. And then you can move on up to become, you can recruit larger and larger armies, basically, as long as you have the finances to fund them. And that seems to be the core mechanic in the game. You need to find ways to make enough money so that you can sustain the army that you have, both in numbers and in quality, because your troops will rank up and they cost more as they rank up. And so you can move up to mercenary, or you can pledge allegiance to a certain faction and fight for them. So now you're fighting those other factions' enemies, as well as any looters that you come across that you decide to take on. And then you can eventually siege castles. You can take over or be granted castles or fiefs by whoever it is that you're working for at the time. You can eventually, it seems that you can move up as you gain renown and actually take over an entire faction. And at that point in time, you're a king. And then it seems that you can take over other factions as well, gaining more kingdom titles. And at that point in time, you're an emperor. So you can go, it's the whole spectrum. You start out as one single person, and then you can just climb the ladder all the way to the top if you want. You can also just stay at one level and play the game that way. This is an open sandbox thing where it allows you to create your own stories. So with that said, let's talk about the story I'm thinking of. As you can tell from the graphic, Restoration of the Empire. That is what we're going to be doing. This game is a fictional medieval universe, but that said, it is really easy to tell that they have patterned the quote-unquote empire after the Roman Empire. And so I'm going to make my guy as Roman looking as I can. I'm going to aim for that. I'm going to try and make a Roman looking character with a Roman looking haircut, no beard, no long hair, right? This will be a very Romanesque character. We're going to give him a Roman name. And right now I am thinking of the name Lucius Calvintius Regulus. We'll go with that. The way that this story opens up, you learn that you've been hit by bandits. The town you live in was raided by bandits. Your parents were slain. you, and it looks to me like your older brother, but maybe it could be your younger brother. You and this particular brother, you're of an age. You're like peers. You survive and are able to get away. But your younger brother and your baby sister, your younger brother is preteen, and your baby sister, I believe she's an infant, but she might be a toddler. I'm not for sure. Anyway, they are kidnapped. And so that's kind of how the game opens up, is that you and your brother are going to try and rescue your siblings before they get sold into slavery or whatever it is that these bandits are going to do, ransomed to the highest bidder. I don't know. And but the backdrop of the world that is happening in is a fractured empire. We are in the midst of a succession crisis. Basically, if I've got this right, the emperor passed away. And when that happened, the empire split into three separate factions: Western, Northern, and Southern. They have three separate claimants to the throne, and they're all fighting each other. Now, that's the big level. That doesn't seem very unusual, right? We've read in history about all kinds of succession crises. But that's not where our character's at. Our character is down at the bottom level in a very local area. So instead of thinking macro and looking at a big map, let's think about the small picture for a minute. What is it that keeps this society going? How did the empire become the empire? And we're going to go ahead and parallel this to the Roman Empire. There's all societies have a certain set of rule structures and expectations of how life goes and what each citizen does and what they're not allowed to do. And they have a way of enforcing that so that the society can function as a whole. All these different individuals can come together, and as a group, they can move forward on an agreed upon vision of the future. And they have an agreed upon rule structure of how to do that and how not to do that. And then they enforce it. We would probably call that law and order. And and that's how they're able to move forward and flourish, and everybody rises together. I've heard the term, what is it, a high tide lifts all ships, things of that nature, something like that. And so the society moves and rises together as a whole when you have this structure in place where people know how to function, and it's something that everybody agrees upon, and stuff of that nature. Well, all that's gone because who enforces that? This is not a day and age that has police, right? It's the army that enforces that. And right now we have a fractured empire, and the armies are out fighting each other. And so what has happened here is that in the absence of enforcers, and in the absence of people who are able to keep the peace, and to, I guess, mediate between civic controversies, you know, um, what happens is that chaos takes over, anarchy rules, and might means right. Now, in the world that our guy exists in, you have bandits rising up. They've become emboldened. Again, the game refers to them as looters. So these looters are running around burning, pillaging, robbing, stealing, killing, kidnapping. They are taking over. And as they see that there's no repercussions, they grow more and more emboldened, and their ranks begin to swell. Because at the same time, you have to probably guess that the infrastructure and economy of this empire is suffering again down at that lower level, at the baseline level. The, and because of that, people are without jobs, and then they see, hey, I could go join a gang. They're getting away with it. Why not me? At least I could fill my stomach that way. Right. And it descends down into a bestial kind of way of thinking. It's me, 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 me. That's that's always what survival does, right? That's not a civilized state of being. It's a survival state of being. And so that's what our guy is caught up in. And what I'm thinking is that, we'll wrap it up here because I don't want this to go super long. But what I'm thinking is that our guy understands him and his brother. I think the brother is named Nathanos. They need their first priority is to rescue their siblings. But our guy has thought ahead and he's thought what comes next. And he realizes, I mean, at first he's taken aback. What in the world's going on? They got rolled over by bandits. That's never happened. We can imagine something like this is the breaking of the Pax Romana. What was it like for those people? You had 2 years of peace, and then all of a sudden it's gone. People are used to not having to handle things themselves, and it's more so, it's not so much a lazy thing like it's somebody else's job. It's not that kind of an attitude. It's more like that's not my role, and if I go out and try and do that, that's vigilantism, and I could be the one who goes to prison. It's not my role. My role is to be the blacksmith or the bread baker or something like that. The soldiers are the ones who handle the brigands, you know and the judge, the courts handle the justice and stuff like that. Well, all of that's gone now, so people are kind of thinking, what do we do and how do we handle this? And it's occurring to our guy that if we rescue our siblings and there's not any law and order, then aren't we just randomly waiting for the next guy to show up with a spiked club and say, with his 40 friends, and say this town gets run according to our rules now because might means right? And so he's starting to recognize we've got to do more than just rescue the siblings. And so I believe Nathanos in this game, we'll find out in the storyline, I can't really remember, but I think Nathanos, I know he goes off to do things himself. But I think what he's doing is he's making contact with the local nobles, something to that effect. And it's up to us to go and hunt down bandits and find out. We're trying to track down where our siblings are. And what I'm saying is that our guy has thought ahead and he realizes that law and order has to be restored. And if there's no army around to do it, then it's incumbent upon him and others who think like him. And so what he's thinking is that not on my watch. He knows what civilization looked like, and this isn't it. And so that's why I titled it Restoration of the Empire. This guy is going to start thinking big. He starts out thinking small. He just wants to provide security for his local area so that he and his can get along. But pretty soon, it occurs to him, well, it's not just about me. It's about a community of people that are able to thrive, and that can't happen if the rule of the jungle is what's in place. And so there's got to be some law and order. So he's going to go around, he's going to find people that think like him. He's going to visit local taverns. There's got to be others out there that are thinking the same thing and that are without work right now because things are a mess. And then he's going to go out and he's going to wreck shop. And then what we'll see is that after that'll be like phase one. After that, we start moving into factional warfare. We can become a mercenary band, or we can pledge allegiance to a faction that we think would rule correctly, and that's probably the route that I'll go. And at that point in time, it goes from just being more of a local providing security for our region and patrolling our area, and it gets to be more of a political thing. And we're now pledging allegiance to a certain faction, and we will war against these other factions in the interest of bringing this empire back together again for everybody. And at that point, I guess what you might say, I'm just thinking of this live right now, I guess what you might say is that becomes a little bit more patriotic. I think I would describe that as patriotic, where you're not just thinking of yourself and you're not even just thinking of your local community. You're thinking of your entire people, right? However, that group is made up, you've got nations out there. The Roman Empire was like this. You had lots and lots of different people represented in the Roman Empire. So, uh, but you have a national ideal, and that's who your people would be, right? So anyway, I think that's the route that we're going to go. I'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. We're right at 20 minutes. And I will pick you up in the character creation in the next episode. I will already have the character made. I don't see any point in having you guys sit there while I tool around with facial structure to try and get someone that looks Roman. But we will pick it up in the character creation menu where you start to pick traits. And we'll pick our traits out, and then we'll get started with the game. So again, I am Aesop Grimm. Thank you for coming by this channel, and I will see you in the next episode where this story begins. Thanks for visiting Aesop Grimm's Chronicles. If you've made it this far in the video, please consider rating, commenting, subscribing, and sharing. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, stay shiny.